Certainly. Here's an extended, humorous story, aiming for over 2,500 words. It's a mix of quirky characters, absurd scenarios, and lighthearted humor. Let's dive in. The Great Spaghetti Heist. In the quaint little town of Puddingville, nothing much ever happened. The days were long, quiet, and predictable. Most people would describe it as peaceful, but for the more adventurous folk, of which there were few, it was boring, very boring. However, all of that was about to change, thanks to one unlikely group of characters who would soon become known as the masterminds behind the Great Spaghetti Heist. It all started with Norman Figglesworth, a retired librarian with a penchant for puzzles. Norman had spent his entire life surrounded by books, the smell of old paper his constant companion. He was a man of routine, and in Puddingville, that meant everything. Every morning he would wake up at precisely 7 a.m., drink a cup of chamomile tea, and sit in his garden, where he would read the local newspaper, the Puddingville Gazette, cover to cover. And every day, without fail, the headline was some variation of Puddingville celebrates annual pie baking contest, or mayor declares third straight month of quiet. It was uneventful, to say the least. But one fateful morning, as Norman sipped his tea and opened the paper, he was met with something entirely unexpected. The headline read, "Spaghetti Shortage Hits Puddingville." Norman nearly choked on his tea. A spaghetti shortage? In Puddingville? It seemed absurd, but as he read further, he learned that the town's main supplier, Tony's Pasta Emporium, had suddenly run out of spaghetti due to an unforeseen supply chain issue. The horror. Norman wasn't particularly fond of spaghetti himself. In fact, he hadn't eaten pasta since 1987, but something about the headline gnawed at him. Perhaps it was the sheer audacity of the situation. How could a town known for its Italian restaurant, Mama Bella's Spaghetti Shack, function without its most essential dish? As Norman pondered this conundrum, a thought crept into his mind. A thought so ridiculous, so outrageous, that he almost dismissed it immediately. Almost. What if, he whispered to himself, I were to steal the last remaining spaghetti in town? The idea hung in the air like a particularly fragrant meatball. Steal the spaghetti? From Mama Bella's Spaghetti Shack? It was preposterous. Norman had never stolen so much as a library book in his entire life. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that this might be exactly the kind of excitement his life had been missing.